Welcome to TradingNBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 12th of October. Well, we talked about the potential of, fading short-term buyers, putting straight on the market, and again, that 50% level being a critical factor. As we close to the bottom of it with continued white spike, seen some support here in the pre-market at the 23%, but that's going to still have to work pretty hard to maintain that. Similar effect on the NASDAQ, only it dipped below but stayed back above the 23%, and actually with the ABM reset pretty much just above the ABM yellow. Very similar configuration, but you can see that with the NASDAQ in the deep red for the shakeout here, still hasn't reached a turnaround from at least a daily standpoint. Euro continues its slide. None of these are shock as oil continues to add to its gains, supply disruptions, tightness. It's all just going to have an effect. Real rates are rising steadily here from a treasury standpoint, despite what the Fed's doing. So just this decoupling is continuing. Now you have the potential labor crisis that are developing as people are, you saw it with Southwest and the refusal to go along with the mandates for vaccinations, and I think that you see those lawsuits. You said Texas as well, the governor announced a ban on anyone requiring mandate of vaccines. So the battle is going to continue. The question will be how much will it affect productivity and growth? And I think the market's going to start having to weigh those possibilities as well. That's going to continue to add support to Bitcoin and push up the alternative, because that's the new gold, so to speak, just because it's an alternative hedge. From a 50K standpoint, it started up with a little bit of the up move, but then immediately our magenta dots, which is that spike of the magenta, but then dropping down below, obviously white moving up in this case, as well as the little cyan ones I have here, which are just spikes of orange that go above 12 level in most cases, but made it adjustable to where if it's just over like the 7.5, so it's a flexible reading, and just a matter of going through and examining which areas of those work the best. We've seen a slight recovery in the 50K, again, right back at this exact same 43.55 algo. And again, for the market, right around 43.70 range is a critical junction point, because if you remain below that, it just puts more downside pressure on the market. And again, we talked about the fact that there really aren't a lot of shorts from an activity standpoint, so it really adds more pressure to the bulls. From an intraday standpoint, everything started off rosy, shooting up nicely, and then we came across midway after we had that lovely run of cyan under red, always a buy setup, and then boom, it created that rose configuration, which is that crossover, the dip of the magenta and that below the 33 level. So all the classic signs for what a short would be, and literally it was a bar earlier, but you were still cyan under red. And once the green dips below, you can begin to think about that from a short. It held on for a little while longer, than a secondary signal came, and we posted about that, and then that's when the cascade lower just began, and it just kept filling in all the positive extremes. You had them marked from going back before, and then boom, all the way across. And one thing I was going to point out is that it's a little bit of a test feature that I'm running with the shakeout as well. Waiting for those moves where shakeout yellow moves above the 13.5, even though whenever you're in the dark red, not just in a regular situation, so it only applies during those dark red segments. And then you have DOC above the 13.5. In that particular case, it was right here. And then at that point, you're able to check, do I have a buy signal, or am I looking at a negative weak setup? In this case, with a massive white over magenta spike. In this particular case, you're expecting those lows to be revisited, and that's exactly what took place. So it's going to be a great little marker to adjust from. And in fact, then as we moved across, you can see we were in deep red throughout all of this segment, going into post-market. And then right as it started to pick up, we were able to see a move of cyan slightly above, but in this case declining magenta, so it was still looking for a little bit of weakness. And then the secondary turnaround came right about here when we popped back above, and you had the orange dip below red, and red still above the -13. And so that shows you the difference between those what appear to be almost identical setups within the shakeout utilizing the NBI, but this one turns into a buy, where the one right before it is a warning that you're potentially looking for a failure going lower as you're still in weak. Now potentially the magenta on that could turn around, build back up, but until it did, no, as well as you had no steel reset until you got that cross dip, and then you ended up with that turnaround. And that's led to a nice little rally here post, but we're seeing potential weakness. But you had cyan under red through this one, and even though this is popped here, I don't really have a cross of my weight, being that it's so far from the original spike out moment. I would like to see that weight crossing back above. So it's one of those where you can take that signal point and say, okay, yeah, short below that would be reasonable at that point, but I got a rising gold and rising azure, so I would wait for that just a little bit longer, and it's clearly going to cross over and give us a much cleaner entry on that setup. That's the long and the short of it. Right before the market goes open, I've had a severe migraine, and that, so I'm a little late with our report, but we'll get it out here before the market opens. As always, though, trade well, look for me on Escape Chat.